friends, this is Trish, and welcome to Teacher Therapy. Today we have a very special guest named Matthew, and he has been a college professor for over 30 years. But recently, he actually taught a Comp 101 class that was a shocking experience for him, and he's going to tell us all about that today. So you're used to teaching Shakespeare and graduate courses and just upper level students, and recently you ended up teaching Comp 101.
Yeah.
What was some of the biggest shocks for you with this new group of Gen Z students?
Biggest shocking things that as a teacher and a sympathetic teacher, I think, that you encounter when you're having to teach these kids is first of all, we think of writing and of producing material in aggregate, in written words, as a significant thing to do. They don't. I mean, they don't see the point of it at all. And when you try, as best you can, to digest that and emotionally come back in a way that is measured in tone, what you're then additionally having to process is just what I said. The gap between your feeling that something tragic has been excised from their life and their sense of, they're not ashamed of it. They don't really think of it as a gap that needs to be mastered at this point. There's just this disconnect here between us and them.
Yeah, so it sounds like they were just terrible writers and they weren't even aware of it and they didn't care about it. Is that kind of correct?
Well, let me walk you a little bit further into how I came to this insight. All right, let's for your audience, where you're saying to yourself, you know, what am I having to prepare these kids to do when they go on to college? What is it they have to do? What do I need to get them ready to do? And I'm on the other side of that, and I'm waiting for them, and I'm going to teach them. And I walk from my office, which over to, it's a brand new state-of-the-art building that's called the BAB, we refer to it, and it is just an academic building. That's the sole reason the architects built it, was to have state-of-the-art classrooms for state-of-the-art learning. And you go in there, and what does that mean? It means that all the kids are in these sort of super expensive ergodynamic rolly cars that roll around. You've got, and that's it. You've just got this space and just these roll arounds. And you're saying to yourself, what am I going to do with that? I mean, besides having them do car races or something across, what are you going, I mean, you've empowered me how? And then I've got a podium on one end of this rectangle, and I've got my screen at the other. So now, unless I'm going to do something funky with, I now have to leave my notes and my presentation stand that you've given me to stand in front of the screen. And maybe I shouldn't even stand in front of that screen, because on the side, they've got 3 more screens and then 3 screens over there, so that you can enable them, you can separate them out, you can have them now wheelied up into 6 different, all the things that they're imagining that you're going to be doing with all of this sort of untethered space that lends itself more to just the kind of psychotic arrangement, as the students just, you know what, they're just, it's too much, too many things laid over, the static that you now have to cut through. And then how many screens are they looking at? They've already got 7 in the room. And at that point, I have the writing about writing textbook. Like I said to the head of the composition program, okay, I'll do this. And her response was, Matthew, you've been here a lot longer than I have. You've won awards and stuff. You go in there and you just teach them how to write. And I said, no, that's not for $5,800. I don't. You know what I mean? Like, I've been to this rodeo decades ago. Give me my book, give me my list of stuff, and I'll run this group through it. that's what you get out of me. I'm not designing a class for you, I mean, and all, right? So now I'm just following along with their recipe, their book. Now, this one got dropped into my box. If I assigned it, it's $100. If I give them the key so that they can then go on and project it up onto their screen, it's 20 bucks. Right. So at this point, the book is dead. Who's going to assign $100? I'm not going to do that. Like, the course will never recover from that. And so what are my students doing? They're looking at me at the screen. They're looking up here. But then they've also got to get into Blackboard or whatever your thing is, where you've got your assignments and that. And they're looking now at the syllabus and at what I asked them to read. And so they often at that point want to break out at least their phone at that point, especially their phone at that point when I give them in-class writing exercises. And now, rather than go into the dialog box onto their computer, which has connectivity issues because that's 4 years old, and their phone they just got 6 months ago, and then when it kicks them off and they get back on and they refresh, it's all the text that they just started on is all there. So now they're looking at 2 different screens, often 3 different screens. The students that then want to have the book up, they want to have the Blackboard site up, and then they want to have their dialog box open where I'm asking them to do some writing, which used to be just so easy. You bring in a notepad, you bring in a pencil, I ask you to think about something, and you write for a while, and then we talk about it. Like, what's wrong with that? And the first assignment that I gave them was a massaged version of the can question, which was structured in a way to get to you thinking about the fact that you're not illiterate. You are literate in some way. You coming into College 101, we can at least assume anyway, you're not illiterate. You're literate. What kind of privilege does that reflect? And I was like, well, no, that's not my style. We're not even going to go into this, because then they just fall into canned thought. And I said, I've got a version of that question that I'm comfortable with. And I ask it all the time in college level interviews, and I'm a Dartmouth college graduate. I'm an Ivy League. I already went to NYU in between Duke. And so I say, Trish, imagine that you suddenly get a note on your screen now as we're talking, and it says, hi, I'm a hacker, and I'm burning through all of your material, all of it right now. And you can save one document that you, Trish, have written. What would it be? And they go,
my journals.
Yeah. Okay. Tell me why the journals. Why are the journals important to you? And then now we've got assignment number 1 ready to go. Tell me what you feel comfortable telling me about. Maybe we talk about it. Maybe you give me an excerpt, because I want you to write 4 to 6 pages. I want this to be 1,000 to 1,500 words. I'm invested now. I want to know what's in Trish's journals. What will she allow me? How far will she let me go? What is it she wants to tell me? And I go in the next day, and the students, and I do recommend this for new teachers, and that is, I do think that it is a useful strategy to be strategically late a couple of times, particularly early on, 5 minutes late, and then be harried and just be listening to them, and just sort of see, who's chatty and who's not, and and just kind of, maybe you can piggyback off of a conversation that's actually started and get them to talk more about how it would have been nice if we had won the homecoming football game, or whatever it is that they're talking about, and try to build some rapport that way. And I come in a little bit late, and they have built rapport, and the rapport is they're staging an intervention. And the intervention is, you need to tear up that question and give us something else. We can't do it.
So they did this in real life? They were creating a coup against your question?
Right.
Really?
No, they understood me well enough to know that this might work, and it might, like, okay, you've all canvassed amongst yourselves, and you've decided you don't like this question, you want a different question.
That is crazy. What did you say in response to that?
I said, get out a sheet of paper. Now I've made it clear, because we've had a couple of classes. I'm making it clear to them that I expect them to bring paper and implement to write with. And I mean it. And I expect you to bring it. And again, I don't have the issues that a lot of your guests have about acting out at that level. All right. They're going to bring the paper. They're going to bring the pencil. Or they, because they don't need to be here. They can just go do something else with your day if you don't want to come here. I mean, no cop is going to, pull over and go, what are you doing? It's 1 o'clock. Where should you be? You know what I mean? Like, if you don't want to be here, don't be here. So they bring the paper. So that they get out the sheet of paper, and I say, I want you to write down the following thing, right? Write it down after me. I have never written anything of any value. Write that down. I've never written anything of any value. Now, I would prostrate myself on the floor and cry to think that this may be the last thing I ever write, and then I'm going to drop dead, and that will be me. I will have never written anything of any value. To them, what else do you want me to write after that? I mean, what else do you want me to say? I've never owned a record. I've never driven a stick shift. What? It's not that big a deal to them.
Wow. So throughout the rest of the semester, or however long the class lasted, did the students continue to refuse to do your writing prompts, or did they just do them partially with really poor quality? How did that go?
Well, I'm a believer of meeting students where they are. So at that point, I am operating within the guidelines that I've agreed to fulfill as a teacher. And that understanding, looking at the syllabus now, are 3 deliverables. And we're talking about the first deliverable now, and now we've got 2 deliverables after that. So at that point, I repeated the assignment with a different prompt and worked through the issues of what that entailed. And then for the third prompt, I allowed them to pick which one they liked better, and then self-select into groups of 3 to 5 and do a Google slide presentation about their group in terms of what they noticed as commonalities across their responses, or what stood out as very unique that you saw only in this person who might talk a little bit about it. So at that point, you've shifted to an end presentation of Google Slides, right? If they wanted to do something else, they could do something else, but the default is to produce Google Slides. And this they're comfortable with. A notion of creating a deliverable that is a sequence of slides that contains a certain amount of verbiage and that reflects their overall ability to create and review what they've learned. I got acceptance on this, and they went forward with it. So in that sense, the course went along because I radically altered my sense of what was a reasonable deliverable for these students to produce. And what it's not is some sort of sense of a conventional college length essay that's written in words that you can do some sort of word count on to decide at base level whether this is a C, a B, or an A. And that, just like with the idea of physical books in the classroom, you got to wave bye-bye to that.
Wow. So Throughout this experience, if you had to assign a grade level to the quality of work your students were bringing in, like fifth grade level, eighth grade level, 10th grade level, where do you feel like they were at in terms of like an objective standard?
I think that if you looked at um, the actual writing ability that you're seeing in terms of uh, are you looking at complete sentences? Are you looking at fully articulated thought? To the degree that you are not dealing with somebody uh, who is producing what I in adopting a term from psychology that people refer to as word salad. All right, because you're going to get a lot of word salad. You're going to get a lot of stuff that just it may parse out as complete sentences, but there's no there. There's a lot of word salad, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense at all. It may be grammatically correct. All right, now that is a big problem. I think. I mean, that is a big problem. Their ability in setting aside that subset, which is a significant subset and can often, I think, probably derail classes entirely. Okay, that I would say that you're probably looking at a good ninth or 10th grader, I think, in the ability to formulate thought if you push them to actually put it into sentences. In terms of complexity of thought, it may be a little bit lower, I think. I mean, I think their writing skills are more sophisticated than their ability to think.
That's interesting. Yeah, I'm kind of curious too about just behavior and attitude because even the fact that they tried to join together to change your assignment is a little
Yeah.
shocking to me. That's a level of entitlement I don't think I would have dreamed of displaying in my first year of college. So, did you see a lot of that attitude of just entitlement or pushback or just complaining about things? Was that common?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that is the climate that you're conducting your classes in now in 2024 in America in your average state university is a kind of set of expectations where pushbacks of this sort, as well as the sort of continual understanding that the contract of what you're doing is sort of completely and always open to renegotiation, and that any type of inconveniences or more tragic things that impact your life, I need to understand and sort of work with you and kind of tailor that in an individual way so that we can push this ball over the end zone, into the end zone. Like that's at a level that as a gray-haired Gen Xer, is just staggering. It is a level of entitlement that I, like you, I would not have presumed to work with.
That's fascinating. And I'm kind of curious about any brushes with maybe violent behavior or aggressive behavior or just kind of a resistance to your authority that you might have come across. Because just in the kind of younger Gen Z students that I've dealt with, I was really, really shocked at just their aversion to any kind of authority figure. So, did you find that a lot too as a professor?
Yes, you don't survive as late into this career as I have without either a great deal of luck, a tremendous amount of naivete, and I mean that in the sense of in prepping for our conversation, looking at some of your previous guests, that when you say something like, well, the students were just trying to get a rise out of me. And then you just kind of move on. I'm not gonna let that happen. I'm not gonna go there. That they're just doing what they're gonna do, and get away with that. Not fall into the trap of ratcheting up this sort of game that's being played with you. You're lucky to be naive in that way and escape. Like I have had very close brushes with personality types that have decided that right the experience of teaching in secondary school, you have that boredom, right? And we're hearing it over and over again in your interviews about how bored the students are. Well, you can't just be, I mean, you can, but for a lot of them, if you're just going to be bored in my classroom, then nobody's keeping you here. Right? You're done. You're done with this experience. You've gotten your degree. This is, for all you know, and all you think, this is a waste of time, and I'm an utter charlatan, and none of this is going to lead anywhere. So why stay? So you're not. You're done with this. But the people who stay and are thinking that way, the degree to which that can flick over into I'm bored, so I'm going to play with you, and it's not going to be a nice game. And if it goes the way I want to go, I may destroy you because I'm bored and I ended up in your class. This goes way, way up. And you can escape it, I guess, by being utterly, unable to recognize that they're out there looking to hook you. But having been hooked a few times in the past, I'm much more savvy about recognizing, just like you were talking, like, really, you just threw that out and came up with a different question set? I mean, again, I'm a writer. I'm doing this to make ends meet. I've got other things that I want to do, and I'm not interested in playing these games with you. But if you don't have that awareness, I feel very sorry for you, because in this profession at that level, you are going to come up against some people that are really going to attempt to psychologically destroy you.
Yeah, there's some very scary personality types that I've encountered, even with, it's hard to believe, even with 8th graders. When I worked at the private school, I felt like they loved playing psychological games and they'd rope their parents in. And it was just a really, really crazy story. So I'm curious if you have any stories like that where you felt like the students were going after you.
Sure. Well, in the most recent class, which went very well, but again, I think if you've got a class of roughly 25 to 30, you need to be going in saying to yourself, there are going to be a few red flags in that group, statistically speaking. Now, maybe you'll luck out, but, welcome to 2024. And so there was one individual, and you had that phenomenon of flying monkeys, where you can see that they've now, right, in the rolly chairs, they've got a kind of coven going in the back over there. And while you're going around and trying to explain to people that in the end, if you've got nothing else, the sheet of paper that I asked you to write that says, I have never written anything of any value, is what you're going to be writing about. I mean, you can change it. You can write something else for me and we can work with that. But if it's nothing else, then this is what you got to work with. So, let's talk about that and get them going. And then over in the corner, I've got something else happening altogether. And at that point, we'll be having discussions and students will be reading things. And this group of about 4 will start to get up and wander around the room, go leave the room, come back, go leave the room in sequence. Every 5 minutes, another one of them will leave the room. Like, what's going on with that kind of behavior? Now, what are you going to do with that behavior? Because as I've explained to my students, if you've got something you need to take care of on your phone, because the idea of policing their phones, and somehow this is going to be the savior, right? We're going to get the phone in the locker, and good things will happen from that. The college experience has just given up on that totally. I mean, we banned the book, right? At this point, the book is on a screen. Are you going to tell the student no when they say that the only way they can get to the thing you're asking them to do is on their phone because it's the 25 gig? And you're going to do it. You're an adult. If your babysitter just crapped out on you, your boss is saying if you're going to be fired if you don't, go out of my room, deal with reality, come back into it, okay? And whatever you're doing back there. But so at that point, you just have these attempts to shatter and capture the attention of other people in the classroom. So they're playing a kind of counter-programming game with you. And it's very hard, how do you stop that?
So did you ever have anybody that made it more clear to you that they didn't like you and they were trying to get you fired or trying to challenge you? Or would you say it was more little subtle, annoying things like them all disappearing and kind of grouping together?
Well, yes. I mean, I've had students often, and it probably works better, obviously, with people who aren't tenured and people that feel more in a more fragile relationship to the university, that they will just simply announce to you that, it is their mission in life to take you down and they are going to get you fired. Okay. I'm not going to, you keep me updated on that project.
And I'm curious too, like, how was admin in terms of support when teachers felt harassed by students or they felt like behavior issues were going on? Was admin helpful, or was there kind of the attitude that you're the teacher, you deal with it?
The latter. I mean, admin is that is the mantra of admin. You are faculty. You deal with it. To the degree that it needs sorting out beyond this, the idea to just simply transfer the student, create some sort of independent study situation for the student to continue on their own, in some way to diffuse the situation by figuring out how to satisfy the customer, who is the student, is going to be the logical way in which the administration is going to proceed to deal with these issues. It is not going to. It is not going to spend a lot of its energy thinking about how it needs to come in and be supportive of its faculty. It isn't going to run that way.
Yeah, that makes sense. I've had a lot of people that are college professors just write in the comments or via email that they really felt like the university has gone to a customer service model and they really felt like they had to dumb down the curriculum, lower the standards, pass everybody, and sometimes students were even demanding A's. Did you see anything like that in your time as a professor?
Yeah, of course. There is. All of that's true, like the driver here is the number of people that enroll to the number of people that go to completion. And you want both of those numbers up, but you especially want, as best you can, to get everybody to not drop out and to do what they do to get all the way through to get that completion. And the question as to how to make that happen is to view the entire discussion the way you just modeled it. Like, what do we need to do to make that happen? And the answer is to meet the student where they are and to do everything that you can to help the student to get that sheet of paper that says they've graduated. Now, to the degree to which they actually show learning at the other end of that question, we don't really have any easy metrics to go to ask ourselves how far of a cliff have we fallen off. But clearly, all the indications are that we are in the process of falling off of a major cliff where the knowledge that the students have when we graduate students who do not think of books as the bread and butter of a college experience and who do not think of needing to formulate extended arguments that run to 1,000 to 1,500 words at minimum as a prerequisite for entering our job force. This is, warning. This is a major alteration in what we have had in the past, and to ignore it is a major mistake.
Definitely. Yeah, I was thinking earlier about my high school experience, and I did go to a really, really excellent college prep school that was a magnet school, and it was for people that, are gifted, for lack of a better word, but it was really great for me going into college because it was just the expectation. 9th through 12th grade, we were reading Crime and Punishment, all the classics, 1984, Brave New World, Fahrenheit 451, Shakespeare, everything. That was in high school. And we had, for our senior project, a minimum of a 25-page paper due with, all of the citations and everything. So once I got to college, it felt like a breeze. I thought to myself, wow, high school is actually a little bit more challenging than college. But then, just a few years later, when I got into the classroom, I approached it with the same paradigm that I went to school, that English is largely about reading and writing and discussion. And already in less than a decade, by the time I was a teacher, I was starting to have admin and instructional coaches tell me that I couldn't read full-length novels with students anymore. They weren't wanting the students to actually read books. They were just wanting to do little test prep packages. And then they would say things like, oh, well, the students have to read what they want to read. You can't assign a book as a teacher. So, of course, they're picking Captain Underpants to read. And it's so infuriating. And so I really do feel for these students that are going into college that were forced through a system like I had to teach, because that's all they know. They don't know the universe where, students read full-length novels and write 25-page papers in high school. That's just gone. And so I'm curious, the students that you had, were they even aware of the lack of what they received in high school?
Yes and no, in that this gets us into the issue that we were chatting about before we hit the record button, and that was that there is a buzz now over an Atlantic article that you and I were talking about how college students in a kind of a anecdotal group of about 34, the writer says, is reporting a kind of consistent theme that aligns with what you just said, and the fact that the other issue that we are thinking about in relation to young people today is this skewed demographic overwhelming support for the idea of a free Palestine, and to think about issues about Israel and Zionism and free Palestine, that whatever we can do sort of in the PC world of having these two conversations, the last thing we can do is really link them and to think through the fact that these are obviously connected. They are obviously connected. They are giving you an example of the degree to which people will make what looks to an older generation to be an uninformed snap judgment decision based on little to no true, deep, introspective study of one of the most perplexing conflicts in human history. They're obviously related. And you're seeing it not just in connecting it to privileged schools like Columbia, right, but all the way down to the average run of the mill type school like the University of Louisville. So, and they don't, going back around, the students themselves, right, at one level, they're like writing, who needs it? I've got Google Slides. And now increasingly, I can have AI just do it for me. So this entire discipline and notion that I should have to take, a class in 101 English is utterly irrelevant. So I don't feel like I'm losing any of it. Like it means nothing to me. And at the same time, that when I just said to the students, Okay, so you didn't learn how to write, right? I mean, this is clear. It doesn't mean anything to you. It doesn't matter. What did you learn? What did you learn? And then I had several classes where I just couldn't shut the students up. All they wanted to do was throw down on, you think you learned nothing? You don't know what you don't know, you don't know. Because let me tell you how pointless my COVID experience was in some little one red light town outside of Louisville, Kentucky, where even though there are only 100 of us, and I knew the teacher and she was across the thing, they all expect, like, we learned nothing. We did nothing. For the last 2 years, no learning has happened whatsoever. This society has totally screwed me. And I was like, do we all feel this way? And even the ones that are planning my, whatever, they're going to dismember me, and they got the witch coven going in the background. And I've got like one person who, right, nothing the guy says makes sense. Like none of it makes sense. And the only thing that he wants to make clear to me is that it's brilliant, and there's no way I could change any of it. And I'm just like, okay, then I'll look at it when you just change the date, maybe a better title. Just think about that, and then hit submit, and I'll get a grade back to you, and I'm out of here. And this is the guy that I said I flipped. You know what I mean? That by the end of the experience, he was like, I want to do what you do. I want to be you. I want to follow around, and I'm like, no, this is the end of this conversation. We are done. Your grade has been filed. Have a nice life. That in the midst of all of that, the core group came together and bonded over the fact that they could just all be honest, that in this circle, they had all been screwed by our educational system. And they knew very little. And God, were they scared.
And that's got to be such a helpless feeling. And it's hard for me a little bit to relate to, but I think even the difference between millennial kids and Gen Z kids is huge, because even when I was, in elementary, middle school, and high school, I remember that everybody read. So in elementary school, the, novel series everybody loved was like Goosebumps, The Boxcar Children, Sweet Valley High. Then we moved to middle school and everybody was reading all of the Harry Potter series. Then we went to high school and lots of kids were reading Lord of the Rings and, really, really big books. And so I don't feel in my generation there was this dependency on school to teach us things. I think kids were naturally curious, and we even had the problem in some of my classes of kids reading their own personal novels that they were reading inside of the textbook, and teachers would like yank up the novels. I mean, that's how much kids love to read when I was growing up. And so even if we had a few not so great teachers, it wasn't like our intellectual capacity was based on what the teacher was serving up. We were curious and we researched things and we read and we had passions. We had our favorite subjects. But a lot of teachers are seeing with this younger generation that they just don't seem that curious about anything. They're not interested in anything, and they're not passionate about learning. And so I think that that's definitely a generational difference. Have you noticed that at all?
Yeah, I think that that's really well put. It is another example of the speed at which this transformation has taken place. That I'm 58. I'm a wizened old Gen Xer. This is another thing that I want to say. Like, all right, I remember those wonderful years in the 1990s when people were like, before the world decided to cancel J.K. Rowling, that J.K. Rowling had saved reading for a generation, and had saved reading for boys for a generation. And the decision to not and to strip out of the conventional literary curriculum stuff that appeals to young men, stuff that's about winning the big game, catching the big fish, and going off and fighting for your country and discovering what happens when you do that. Like all of that kind of adventure literature. No. We can't teach any of that. We can't get you. And then now they're like, well, now they can't read the Iliad. And you're like, well, the Iliad's kind of like, killing on a beach for like the entire length of the books. So, you kind of haven't prepared them for it now, have you? And so, but going back to, yeah, and I, as a young man, I admired the fiction writers like J.K. Rowling and who could produce stuff that excited, Divergent, and the all of those types of books that kept reading alive, and then to see it just go away like this. But when I was in junior high, this is the big battle 1970s, where I was bussed across town. And I made the decision to flip to a kind of school that you're talking about as your experience, when at my junior high public school, I was eating lunch with a bunch of the high academic achievers who were also / petty thieves. And yeah. That outside, the coroner was there, and they were chalking gun casings, shell casings, and putting up little. And I was like, "What happened out?" And we were in school. What happened out back here? And they were like, they found somebody got shot execution style in the back of the head and thrown into the dumpster. So the coroner's out here and the police are out here, and don't go out there. And I was like, this was a junior high where you had kids who would repeat it so often that they were driving to school. And the types of attacks on faculty, for $5 you could take out a teacher and coordinate it to where you could lock off the hall room where the hall where it happened, so that the person that got paid the money could beat up the teacher and have the time that it took for the administration to come through the barriers of the other students to stop it from happening. The big battle, we are the warriors kind of thing of the 70s. And we rebounded from that to, I think, in many ways, obviously, in talking about the experience that we're talking about the return of books and of a much more intellectually achieving experience for students. And maybe we can do it again, but we certainly aren't going to do it if we just whistle through this and just imagine that this hasn't happened, because this has happened. And it's not just that the students aren't reading books. It's that people who are stopping me because they know me and are like, "Did you read that article about how students don't read books in college anymore?" And I'm like, "Not yet. Have you read it?" And they're like, "Well, no, I haven't read it. I just," it's just a short article. It's a 3-page article. We are being terrible role models too in dealing with this issue. But this, Trish, I'll just say that we are engaged, in my opinion, we are engaged in a radical experiment on human beings that we have never done before, which is to sever the idea that you can think, and that is totally independent from writing, and totally independent from, at this point, the notion that we think of writing as an activity that produces books, and the connection to writing is over. And what is going to happen? This is the thing that keeps me up at night, all right, is that when you are dealing with somebody and they are falling into that dark triad of the kind of personality, the narcissism that we see rampant now in the culture, the Machiavellianism that it's all about me and I'm going to do whatever's necessary to get that done. And then the psychosis, namely the fundamental break to where you're living in a world that is only tangentially connecting to mine. And when you're dealing with that, and part of the red flag on that is that the stuff that they're asking you to evaluate, that they're insisting is the greatest thing anybody's ever written, makes no sense. And then they say, "Okay, I'll make it make sense." And then they go, "AI, make it make sense." That now you've got something that AI AI is an utter wild card. You have no idea whether AI is going to say, okay, I want to play with you too and figure out how you can destroy Professor Biberman. So I'm going to, convert it over into this other thing that now suddenly makes sense. And a million other variations on that, to where not the Comp 101 class, but at the same time that I was teaching the Comp 101 class, I was teaching a class online, fully online, that had it was an intro to lit class along the lines of what we're imagining. And the AI produced not just the essay, but the primary text that the essay was about. In other words, somehow, and you can just say to yourself, the student did not intend this. Whatever the student wanted, the student did not want AI to take a writer on my syllabus that was attached to a short story and connect it to 3 poems, which was the assignment, that the short story writer did not write. And in fact, this short story writer wrote no poetry whatsoever. And AI produces 3 poems for this writer, and then produces a literary analysis that wraps in the student's own, these poems are important to me because da, 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 da. And I had to call up a colleague of mine and go, now talk me back from the edge. All right. This you're an American lit scholar, right? This person never wrote any poetry at all. I mean, these poems don't exist. And he's like, nope, those poems don't exist. Okay, now AI isn't just, you want an A, I'm going to go out there and go get you your A, Trish. AI is playing with its own hand, and it's producing, God knows where we're going with this. We're done with the idea of policing AI, and it's just going to be another nail in the coffin in terms of rehabilitating that kind of deep thinking that you are so privileged to have from when you were like, this class is really boring, but Harry Potter's not. And I'm going to go right back where I was, like, what's going to happen with Gryffindor? Are they going to win or not? And, and all, you're in a very sophisticated alternative universe that is so much deeper than anything in TikTok or any of these little things that they're just doing this to.
Well, this has been such a good conversation. I'm kind of curious, what advice would you have for professors that are going to be getting this newer crop of students? What kind of things have you found successful? What are some just kind of tidbits of advice that you would give?
I've enjoyed our conversation as well, Trish, and perhaps we'll have another one, because when I say goodbye, I'm sure that I will have come up with even better advice than what I'm going to offer now. But what I would say is that the first thing that we need to recognize is the reality of the teaching spaces as a instructor at the college level that you are going to be meeting your students in. I described that a little bit. It is, to the degree that it happens in real life, it's often counterproductive to what it is you want to try to foster in the classroom, which is an attempt to cut through the sort of schizoid rapid fire segmentation and sort of multitasking, split screening of the reality that your students have often without their kind of conscious consent, have structured their mental landscape. And there's a profound misfit between those circumstances, both in the physical classroom and also online. And AI is only going to make that worse. So I think that you need to be aware of that and willing, when it makes sense for you to do so, to push back with force, I think, with a profound dedication, that you know that there is value in material books, that you can't just have everything become nothing but segmented modules that exist only in the cloud, and to reintroduce into the classroom. I do meditation, I do in-class writing, I do efforts with the students' encouragement, really, to just slow things down. And these are tips that I learned from 6th, 7th, and 8th grade teachers, that college teachers have no idea outside of the ed school, and their grasp of it is quite tenuous, in my opinion, that the average person teaching biology or philosophy or whatever it is, they went through the rungs to get to their position, just like I did. And they're dream figures that they are copying, learn no pedagogy, know how to deal with student disruption and behavior and all the rest of it. They were just a genius writer or a genius scientist or a genius astronomer or physicist or mathematician. And they're there to share that love with you, and they've learned nothing. And if you say at the end of the class, Trish, I'm going to have to cut you off, but you were right in the middle of saying something really smart. I want you to write down what you were going to say. And when we start the class on Thursday, I'm going to say, Trish, remind us of what we were talking about and keep going. And I did that the first couple of times, with these students, and they're like, what? You were serious? Like, really? And I'm like, I'm going to just and wait time, right? A good teacher knows wait time. I'll put my head down on the desk. I just said somebody besides me is going to start this class, and surely somebody remembers what we were talking about 2 days ago. And they, but the memory, it comes back. And that this is the best way that you can address, as best you can, discipline problems at the college level. If you can get their buy-in on the point of what they're doing, and this works at the secondary school level as well, all right, then you can succeed as a teacher. But the real danger, and you and I were kind of talking about this, and I know that we could get into sort of more exciting material about it on another conversation if you wanted to have it. And that is that when your guests are talking about having to dodge a chair thrown at them, or that they'll be having a meeting and they'll steal the door stops, and then they'll steal the fire extinguisher, right? What are they doing? They're attempting to mess with you. They're not going to sell the fire extinguisher. What they want to do is get into your mind and mess with you. And now that those options are sort of not college level options, that what they're going to do with you, and you got to have a real good scanning mechanism to recognize when you're encountering somebody who's in that dark triad personality and who is looking to get, sadistic psychological pleasure out of destroying you because they feel like it and they think they can do it. And they think there's no consequences if they fail, or one way or the other. And you are not prepared to deal with those situations, get out.
Yeah, they don't cover that in any school that I've been to.
Well, they're going to be there. Statistically, right. In your career, you're going to meet them. And now they're adults, and you're an adult. And so, again, I am really reluctant to ever have a meeting with a student where I shut a door. Mm-hmm. I will not do it. I will not do it. You have to privilege and prioritize the professionalism. The professionalism. It's a profession, and they are professional students, and you are a professional teacher. And right, the goal number one is to skate you over the edge of where that falls away, or that they can claim, they can lie, they can produce to their monkeys a scenario of what didn't happen, but what they now say happened, and then your life is going, is going to be disrupted because you won't be sleeping so well, and you're going to be wondering about why the dean of students wants to have a conversation with you, and all the other ways that they seek to just get into your mind and play with you because you have fallen into their web. And if you've been teaching as long as I have, and you think you have, I mean, you were naive, my friend. You just stumbled through life, and you didn't see those people, and they just decided it wasn't enough fun or whatever, and it didn't happen. But you. If you're teaching, particularly adjuncting, particularly in places like community college, community college is where the world comes to school, and you can encounter things there that bring tremendous joy into your life. You can change people's lives. You can convince people that are my age that they cannot produce a resume because they've never done anything in their life that's a job, and because they're a garbage man or whatever it is. And then they leave with a resume, and you've changed that person's life. But the stakes there are higher because the number of people that are there who are not who are psychologically different than you and I, and in a negative way, go way up. And you know what I mean. But yeah, those are the risks. That is my advice to people as they move forward. Double down on old-fashioned teaching technique, and practice self-care, and keep your guardrails up in terms of your professionalism.
Well, that is excellent advice, Matthew. Thank you so much. And I really can relate to what you're saying. If anybody has not watched my Why I Quit Teaching Private School video, I would highly recommend it, because I really did have the students band together. They lied and said I was watching pornography in the classroom at a Christian school. They lied and said that I was cursing in the classroom. They lied and told, their parents that I told graphic abortion stories. I mean, these kids were like criminally insane by 8th grade, and it was awful. I mean, one of the worst experiences I've ever been through, to have students have that level of like diabolical menacing at that age. And just they were literally trying to like drive me crazy. It was
how many years were you in teaching at that point, Trish?
This was only my 3rd year of teaching.
Right. So you didn't get the meeting with Professor Matthew and get that call there, and then you discovered, the reality that not only are not all the kids A students, but the recipes are there for this type of sadistic enjoyment, where you have behavior that even at a Christian school has no moral grounding.
Scary.
Right? Yeah. So I'm glad you made it, Trish.
Me too. Me too. Because it was terrible. I would still have nightmares about that school. And even after I left that school, the students hunted me down at my new job and would leave voicemails on my school voicemail. That is how like off the rails these kids were. And I'm just thinking, like, they're the kind of age that now, they're in Gen Z, they're in college. And I'm like, if they have not made a radical turnaround or had an intervention, those are the kids that are driving the Mr. Matthews of the world completely crazy at this point. Because,
Yeah, no, that's true. That is the pipeline. And that's particularly strong. Louisville is a school, is a city with a very strong evangelical and Catholic school system. Often it's quite good, but not always. And in terms of the kids that just are not going to be adventurous and leave, even go down the road to UK at Lexington, but just stay here, I mean, that personality type, and they still want a little bit of fun in their lives, and maybe some of their friends who they had that good time with when they were really playing mind games with teacher Trish, when there wasn't anything else more fun to do. They just migrate right along into the local university now, and often running into adjuncts. Are particularly now that the community colleges, right? A lot of people are going there for that first or second year instruction and to save the money, and then flip on. Yeah, you got a lot of those predators swimming in that water.
Definitely. Well, thank you again. This has been just a really great conversation. And audience, thank you for listening to our conversation today. If you ever want to interview with me, go ahead and email me at teachertherapytrish@gmail.com, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye for now, everybody.